You lock your front door every night, but you leave your bank statements on the sidewalk for anyone to read. That's not a metaphor. That's exactly what you're doing right now, and you don't even know it. You think privacy is about hiding your browser history or covering your laptop camera with a piece of tape. But while you're worried about someone watching you through your webcam, corporations are walking through the front door of your financial life, taking notes on everything you own, everything you owe, and everything you'll never be able to afford. They're building a complete map of your existence, transaction by transaction, and you handed them the keys. Here's the sick joke. The fortress already exists. The walls are there. The gate is solid steel. But you're standing there, holding it wide open, waving people through because nobody ever told you it was your job to close it. This isn't a story about hackers or identity theft. This is about something older and more patient. This is about the slow construction of a cage, so comfortable you don't notice you're inside it until you try to move. And when you finally do try to move, when you try to buy a house or start a business or just live without someone watching, you'll discover that every financial decision you ever made has been recorded, analyzed, and weaponized against you. The question isn't whether you value your privacy. The question is whether you understand what privacy actually means in a world where your money tells your story better than your mouth ever could. Let me take you back to a moment in American history that nobody talks about anymore. 1933, the middle of the Great Depression. Banks are collapsing like dominoes. People are starving in the streets, and President Franklin Roosevelt is about to do something that will change the relationship between citizens and their government forever. He's about to make it illegal for Americans to own gold. Think about that for a second. Gold, the thing humans have valued for 5,000 years, the thing that represents money itself in the human imagination. The President of the United States made it a crime to possess it. Executive Order 6102. If you owned gold, you had until May 1st, 1933, to turn it in to the Federal Reserve. They'd give you $20.67 per ounce. If you refused, you could face 10 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. In 1933, money, that's about $200,000 today. They called it a temporary emergency measure. It lasted 41 years. Now, the official story is simple. The government needed to stabilize the banking system. They needed to control the money supply. They needed to prevent hoarding during a crisis. And sure, that's all true. But here's what they don't teach in economics classes. This wasn't just about stabilizing banks. This was about visibility. This was about making sure that every significant transaction in America could be seen, tracked, and controlled. Gold is anonymous. Gold doesn't leave a paper trail. You can hand someone a gold coin and nobody knows it happened except you and them. The government hated that. They needed to see everything. So they banned the invisible money and forced everyone to use the visible kind. The Gold Reserve Act of 1934 came next. The government revalued gold at $35 an ounce. Overnight, they'd effectively stolen the difference from every American who turned in their gold the year before. But more importantly, they'd established a principle. Your money isn't really yours. Your wealth isn't really yours. It's all conditional. It all exists at the pleasure of the system. And if the system needs to see what you're doing with it, you don't get to say no. Fast forward 20 years. 1954. America is booming. The war is over. The economy is exploding. Suburbs are spreading like wildfire. And in this moment of prosperity, something quiet happens that most people never notice. The Bank Secrecy Act doesn't exist yet. That's still 17 years away, but the foundation is being laid. Banks start keeping better records. The IRS gets more aggressive. The net is being woven thread by thread. But here's where it gets interesting. In 1954, nobody's worried about privacy because privacy still exists. You can walk into a bank with cash, open an account with a fake name, and nobody asks questions. You can buy a car with a suitcase full of bills, and the dealer just counts it and hands you the keys. The financial surveillance state is still science fiction. People think George Orwell's 1984 is about totalitarian governments in faraway places, not about the quiet bureaucratic machinery being assembled in their own country. Then comes 1970. The Bank Secrecy Act. This is the big one. This is where they formalize everything. Banks are now required by law to report large cash transactions. They have to keep detailed records of your accounts. They have to file reports on anything suspicious. And here's the beautiful part, the really elegant piece of social engineering. They don't define what suspicious means. It's whatever the bank thinks it is. So banks, terrified of being fined or shut down, start reporting everything. They turn into informants. Every teller becomes a spy. Not because they're evil, but because the system incentivizes paranoia. A man walks in and withdraws $9,000 in cash. That's just under the $10,000 reporting threshold. The teller reports it anyway as structuring, the crime of trying to avoid the reporting requirement. Maybe the man was just buying a used car and didn't want to carry more than he needed. Doesn't matter. He's in the system now. There's a suspicious activity report with his name on it, sitting in a government database forever. No warrant, no judge, no trial. Just a permanent record that he did something a bank employee found weird. This is how you build a surveillance state in a free country. You don't do it with soldiers and secret police. You do it with paperwork and procedure. You make it boring. You make it bureaucratic. You make it seem reasonable. Of course banks should report large transactions, you say. Of course we need to stop money laundering and drug dealers and terrorists. And sure, that's true. But the net they've built to catch the bad guys catches everyone. Every single person who uses the banking system is now visible. Every transaction is recorded. Every pattern is analyzed. And here's the thing that should terrify you. Once that infrastructure exists, once that surveillance machine is built and humming along, it never goes away. It only expands. New laws add new requirements. New technologies make tracking easier. The machine gets smarter and hungrier and more invasive, and it all happens so gradually that you never notice the walls closing in. Let's talk about what they see, really see. Because most people think financial privacy is about hiding their salary or keeping their credit card number safe from hackers. That's not what this is about. This is about the complete mapping of your life through your money. Every purchase you make with a credit card is recorded. Not just the amount, but the merchant, the location, the time, the category. You buy coffee at the same shop every morning at 7:15. They know you're an early riser with a routine. You fill up gas in a different part of town every Thursday night. They know you're visiting someone. You stop buying groceries at your regular store and start shopping at a more expensive one. They know your income probably went up, or you got a new partner who likes nicer food. You start buying baby supplies. They know you're pregnant before you've told your own mother. This isn't paranoia. This is just data analysis. Basic, simple pattern recognition. And it's not just corporations doing this. It's banks, it's credit agencies, it's data brokers you've never heard of, buying and selling your transaction history like baseball cards. There are companies whose entire business model is collecting this data, analyzing it, packaging it, and selling it to anyone who wants to buy. Insurers use it to adjust your rates. Employers use it to screen applicants. Lawyers use it in divorce cases. And you agreed to all of it when you clicked "I accept" on a 70-page terms of service agreement you didn't read. But it gets worse. Because it's not just about what they see. It's about what they do with what they see. Your transaction history feeds into algorithms that make decisions about your life. Whether you get approved for a loan, whether you get hired for a job, whether you qualify for insurance. These algorithms are looking for patterns, and they don't care about context. They don't care that you withdrew a lot of cash because you were buying furniture from someone on Craigslist. They just see unusual transaction pattern and flag your account. There's a man in Arizona, let's call him Thomas, because his real name doesn't matter. Thomas ran a small construction business, cash business mostly. Home repairs, renovations, that kind of thing. He'd deposit his earnings every week, usually between $5,000 and $8,000. Did this for years. Then one day, he goes to the bank and his account is frozen. No warning, no explanation, just frozen. Turns out the bank filed a suspicious activity report because his deposits looked like structuring. He wasn't structuring. He was just depositing his legitimate earnings. But the bank's algorithm flagged it, and now he's in federal database as a potential criminal. It took him 8 months and $11,000 in legal fees to get his account unfrozen. 8 months where he couldn't pay his mortgage, couldn't pay his workers, couldn't run his business. All because a computer program thought his completely legal behavior looked suspicious. And Thomas is one of the lucky ones. He had enough money saved to hire a lawyer. Most people don't. Most people just get crushed by the machine and never recover. This is the invisible war being waged against financial privacy. It's not dramatic. There are no explosions or car chases. Just quiet bureaucratic violence, account freezes, credit denials, invisible blacklists. And the worst part is that it's all legal. Every bit of it is sanctioned by laws that were sold to you as necessary for national security or consumer protection or fighting crime. The financial system has become a panopticon. That's a prison design from the 1700s where a guard sits in a central tower and can see into every cell. But the prisoners can't see the guard. The prisoners never know when they're being watched, so they always assume they're being watched and they police their own behavior. That's what we're living in now. A financial panopticon where every transaction is potentially monitored, every pattern potentially suspicious, every decision you make about your own money potentially criminal. And you can't opt out. That's the genius of it. You need a bank account to get paid. You need credit cards to rent a car or book a hotel. You need a credit score to rent an apartment or get a phone plan. The system has made itself mandatory. You can't participate in modern life without plugging yourself into the surveillance machine. Or can you? Here's where most privacy advocates will tell you to use a VPN, encrypt your emails, pay with Bitcoin. And sure, that stuff helps around the edges, but it misses the fundamental problem. The surveillance isn't happening at the margins of your life. It's happening at the center. It's happening every time you buy groceries, pay rent, fill up your car. You can't encrypt your way out of this because the problem isn't technological, it's structural. The real question is whether you're willing to redesign your life around privacy instead of convenience. Let me tell you about someone who did. Her name is Sarah. She's a graphic designer in Portland, makes good money, lives alone, pretty normal life. But 5 years ago, she decided she was done. Done with banks watching every dollar. Done with algorithms deciding whether she was trustworthy. Done with the constant low-level anxiety of knowing that every purchase was being recorded and judged. So she made a change. She went cash only. Well, mostly cash only. She keeps one bank account for her business income because clients won't pay in cash. But the moment money hits that account, she withdraws it. She pays her rent with a cashier's check. She buys groceries with cash. She bought her car with cash. She saves money in a fireproof safe bolted to her closet floor. Sounds crazy, right? Sounds paranoid. Sounds like way too much work. And yeah, it is more work. She has to plan ahead. She has to go to the bank every week. She can't impulse buy things online at 2 in the morning. But you know what she has? Privacy. Real privacy. Her landlord knows she pays rent. The grocery store knows she buys food. But nobody knows both. Nobody has the complete picture. Nobody's building a profile of her entire life. And here's what she told me that really stuck. She said, living this way makes her feel like a person again instead of a data point. She said the inconvenience is worth it because she's not constantly aware of being watched. She can buy whatever she wants without wondering if some algorithm is judging her. She can help out a friend with cash without worrying that a bank will flag it as suspicious. She's invisible in the way that humans used to be invisible before the financial surveillance state decided that invisibility was suspicious. Now, I'm not saying everyone should do what Sarah did. Most people can't. Most people don't have the flexibility or the discipline or the risk tolerance, but her story illustrates something important. The fortress exists. The tools for privacy exist. Cash still works. Physical documents still work. Face-to-face transactions still work. The infrastructure of privacy is still there, buried under decades of convenience and automation. We've just forgotten how to use it. The system wants you to believe that privacy is dead, that surveillance is inevitable, that you might as well give up and accept it. That's a lie. Privacy isn't dead. You're just not fighting for it. And here's the deeper truth that nobody wants to acknowledge. The death of financial privacy isn't just about corporations and governments watching you. It's about the death of economic freedom itself. When every transaction is visible, when every dollar is tracked, when every pattern is analyzed, you can't take risks anymore. You can't experiment. You can't fail privately and try again. Everything you do financially becomes part of your permanent record, and that record determines what opportunities you're allowed to have. This is social control through economic surveillance. It's not as obvious as a police state because there are no soldiers on the street corners, but it's just as effective. Maybe more effective, because people don't resist it. They embrace it. They think credit scores are helpful. They think fraud detection is protecting them. They think the surveillance is for their own good. But what happens when the system decides you're a risk? What happens when your transaction patterns don't match what the algorithms expect? What happens when you want to do something that's perfectly legal but looks suspicious to a computer program that doesn't understand context or intent? You get frozen out. You get denied. You get flagged. And there's no appeals process because you're not fighting a person, you're fighting an algorithm. You can't argue with an algorithm. You can't explain yourself to a computer program. You just lose quietly and bureaucratically, and most of the time you never even know why. This is the world we've built. A world where privacy is treated as suspicious, where wanting to keep your financial life private is seen as evidence that you have something to hide, where the default assumption is that if you're innocent, you shouldn't mind being watched. But that's backwards. That's completely backwards. Privacy isn't about having something to hide. Privacy is about having something to protect. Your autonomy, your dignity, your right to make decisions about your own life without someone looking over your shoulder and keeping score. The founders of America understood this. That's why the Fourth Amendment exists. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. Papers and effects. That means your financial records. That means your transaction history. The founders knew that a government that can see everything you own and everything you do with your money is a government that can control you completely. But we've given that right away voluntarily. We've traded it for convenience, for credit card rewards, for one-click purchasing, for the ability to buy something online without getting off the couch. And maybe that trade made sense to us in the moment. Maybe we thought it was worth it, but we never considered what we were building. We never thought about the long-term consequences of making every transaction visible and permanent. Now we're living in those consequences. And they're getting worse every year. More tracking, more surveillance, more algorithms making decisions about our lives. The machine is learning. It's getting better at predicting our behavior, at spotting patterns, at identifying risks. And the better it gets, the harder it becomes to escape. So what do? How do you take back your privacy in a system designed to eliminate it? First, you have to accept that perfect privacy is impossible. You're not going to completely disappear from the financial grid unless you're willing to live in a cabin in the woods and grow your own food. That's not realistic for most people. But you can reduce your visibility. You can make yourself a harder target. You can reclaim some of the territory you've surrendered. Start with cash. Use it for everyday purchases. Not everything, but some things. Get comfortable carrying it. Get comfortable using it. Break the habit of reflexively reaching for your credit card every time you buy something. Every cash transaction is a transaction that doesn't get recorded, doesn't get analyzed, doesn't feed the machine. Second, understand your rights. You have the right to know what information banks and credit agencies have about you. You have the right to dispute errors. You have the right to opt out of certain types of data sharing. These rights are buried in fine print and rarely enforced, but they exist. Use them. Third, diversify your financial footprint. Don't keep all your money in one bank. Don't run everything through one credit card. Spread it around. Make your patterns harder to analyze. The algorithms are looking for simple, clear stories. Give them noise instead. Fourth, and this is the hard one, you have to be willing to sacrifice convenience. You have to be willing to say no to services that require too much visibility. You have to be willing to walk away from deals that cost you your privacy. This goes against every instinct modern capitalism has trained into you, but it's necessary. Convenience is the currency they use to buy your privacy. Stop selling. But here's the thing. Individual action isn't enough. We can all take steps to protect ourselves, and we should. But the real fight is bigger than that. The real fight is about changing the rules of the game. We need laws that treat financial privacy as a fundamental right, not a suspicious preference. We need regulations that limit what banks and credit agencies and data brokers can collect and share. We need transparency about how algorithms make decisions that affect our lives. We need the ability to challenge those decisions and demand explanations. We need the infrastructure of privacy to be rebuilt and strengthened, not dismantled for the sake of convenience and profit. This isn't a radical position. This is just asking for the same rights that Americans had 50 years ago. The right to conduct their financial lives without constant surveillance. The right to be presumed innocent rather than potentially suspicious. The right to make mistakes privately and recover without those mistakes following them forever. The fortress is there, the gate is open, and you're the only one who can close it. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough to matter, enough to reclaim some measure of control over your own life. Because here's the final truth, the one that ties all of this together. Your financial privacy isn't just about protecting your bank account or your credit score. It's about protecting your freedom. Real freedom. The freedom to take risks. The freedom to fail. The freedom to experiment with your life without someone keeping permanent records of every mistake. The freedom to be human in all your messy, complicated glory without being reduced to a credit score and a transaction history. That's what's at stake. That's what we're losing. And that's what we need to fight for. The machine is watching. The algorithms are learning. The net is tightening. But it's not too late. Not yet. You can still close the gate. You can still protect the fortress. You just have to decide that it's worth the effort. Your privacy is a fortress. Start acting like it.